Hello and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to learn a wonderful lesson called A Tribute to Netaji. We all know who Netaji is. Subhas Chandra Bose. The lesson that Netaji and his army bring to us is one of self-sacrifice, unity, irrespective of class and community and discipline. So without wasting any time, let's start with the lesson. In the history of India's freedom struggle, the place of Subhas Chandra Bose is unique. He was the leader who thought of fighting the brute force of the British by armed force. He had a wonderful organizing capacity. He could raise a modern army of about 75,000 men and women. He inspired them with intense patriotic fervor and a burning desire to free their enslaved motherland. So we already know about freedom fighters, the ones who dedicated their life for the freedom of our country. And among those people, there was Subhas Chandra Bose, who was unique. He was unusual, a very special one, different from everyone. So he was a leader who thought of fighting the cruel force of the British by armed force using weapons. He wanted to gain freedom. Brute means cruel or strong. He was so strong and he had a wonderful organizing capacity that he could have an army of about 75,000 men and women. He had the capacity of bringing everyone together and he inspired people with his patriotism, the spirit that he had towards patriotism. Fervor means spirit, and he had a burning desire of getting his motherland free. He wanted freedom, not just for himself, but for everyone. Subhas Chandra Bose belonged to an educated and prosperous family. He was educated in England, Cambridge, and had travelled widely all over Europe. He looked at India from an international perspective. As he had a deeply spiritual nature, his quest for truth and the right guru had taken him to each and every corner of the country. At last, he made up his mind to follow the teaching of Swami Vivekananda and Aurobindo Ghosh in the spiritual sphere and Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das in politics. Subhas Chandra Bose, he belonged to an educated and prosperous family, a wonderful family. And he was educated in Cambridge, England. And he had almost travelled the entire Europe. So he looked at India from an international perspective since he was roaming. Now he had a deeply spiritual nature and he was in search of truth. And that took him to every corner of the country. That's why he was traveling. At last he made up his mind and he started to follow the teaching of Swami Vivekananda, Aurobindo Ghosh and Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das in politics. These three people became very important people in his life. Subhas Chandra had a special regard for his Muslim countrymen. Some of his ancestors like Mahipati Bose and Gopalnath Bose had held the offices of minister and naval commanders under the Muslim rulers of Bengal. The quarters in which we lived, says Bose in his autobiography, was prominently a Muslim one and our neighbors were mostly Muslims. I cannot remember ever to have looked upon Muslims as different from ourselves in any way, except that they go to pray in a mosque. As said earlier, Subhas Chandra Bose, he had believed in the concept of unity. And Subhas Chandra Bose, he had a very special regard, respect towards his Muslim countrymen. And some of his ancestors like Mahipati Bose and Gopalnath Bose, they served as ministers. They served as ministers and naval commanders under the Muslim rulers of Bengal. In his autobiography, he had stated that the quarters, the place where they lived, it was entirely Muslim one. It was a colony completely filled with Muslims. And he said that he could not remember even a single thing that differentiated between them and the Muslims. Only in one way, that they used to go to a mosque to pray. Subhas was born at Cuttack, Odisha on January 23rd, 1897. His father, Janakinath Bose, was a famous lawyer. Bose was a brilliant student. He had very broad-minded views on freedom and other social issues, and his hungry soul was not satisfied with textbooks alone. Describing his childhood, he said, "In my infancy, I was brought into touch with English people, English education, and English culture. After that, I went back to our culture, both classical and modern." Now let us learn something about his childhood. Subhas Chandra Bose was born in Odisha on January 23rd, 1897. So his father was Janakinath Bose, and he was a very famous lawyer. And Bose was a brilliant student. He was very good in his studies, and he also had very good views. He was a broad-minded person, and he had good views on freedom and other social issues, and he was not just satisfied with textbooks. He wanted knowledge from everywhere. And describing about his childhood in his autobiography, he states that during his early period, he was brought into touch with English people, English education, and English culture. He was introduced to that. But after that, he came back to his own culture, both classical and modern. He was inspired by his own culture rather than the English education or the English culture. Bose had a rebellious and independent spirit, and that was apparent from his earliest days. In the Presidency College, Calcutta, he organized a student strike to demonstrate against an English professor who had insultingly pushed away an Indian student. For this, Bose was expelled from the college. After a year, he was allowed to join the Scottish Church College in Calcutta, where he secured a first class in the BA examination. Subhas left for England on September 15, 1919, in order to study and appear at the Indian Civil Service ICS examination. After a year, he came out successfully and stood fourth in the order of merit. But his conscience would not allow him to serve the alien rulers even as a high executive. So he resigned from the ICS and returned to India. And he had a rebellious and independent spirit. What do you mean by rebellious? Disobedient and hard to control. He was ready to fight against anything if he felt that it was not right. That was his view. And we can come to know by one example that had happened during his college. So in the Presidency College in Calcutta, when he was studying there, he organized a student strike because there was an accusation on an English professor who had insultingly pushed away an Indian student. There was differentiation between English and the Indian students there. So he organized a strike, and because of this, he was removed from the college. He was expelled. And after 1 year, he was allowed to join another college in Calcutta itself called Scottish Church College, and there he secured a first class in the BA examination. So Subhas left for England on September 15, 1919. Why? Because he wanted to study and appear at the Indian Civil Service examination, ICS. He wanted to write that examination and pass in it. So after a year, he came out successfully and he was fourth in his ranking. But his consciousness, what is consciousness? Moral sense. He didn't feel like being a part of that country. He could have been there and he would have got a very good position, but he didn't want to serve the alien rulers. What's alien? A foreigner. That's why he resigned from that post and he returned to India, because he wanted to serve as an Indian to India, not to some other country. Now, Bose wanted to chalk out the future course of his life. He had long discussions with Mahatma Gandhi and C.R. Das. He took Das as his mentor and settled down as principal of National College at Calcutta. But Bose gave up his job when Gandhiji started the non-cooperation movement. He was arrested by the British for joining the movement. After his release, Bose formed the Swaraj Party and was appointed the editor of the party's journal Forward. Bose became the executive officer of the Calcutta Corporation in 1924 and gained valuable experience of planning and practical administration. Now Bose wanted to chalk out, he wanted to figure out what his future will be. He had long discussions with Mahatma Gandhi and C.R. Das, Chittaranjan Das, and then he took Das as his mentor as a leader, a person who can be as a guru, teacher, and he settled down as a principal at Calcutta in a college, in a national college. But he gave up his job. He quit his job. Why? Because he realized, or he heard, that Mahatma Gandhiji, he had started the non-cooperation movement at that time. So he joined that movement, and because of that he was arrested by the British because he joined the movement. After his release, that is when the Britishers left him, he formed the Swaraj Party and he was appointed as the editor of the party's journal Forward. That was the name given to the journal. Later on, Bose became the executive officer of the Calcutta Corporation in 1924 and he gained wonderful experience of planning and practical administration, how everything should work around. So he gained complete experience. He was too good with that information. Soon, the activities of the Swaraj Party were found unbearable by the British, on account of which Bose was in and out of jail repeatedly and fell ill many times. Bose was a great thinker as well as a man of vision and action. Subhas made such an impact on the Congress that he was elected twice as the president of the Indian National Congress in 1938 and 1939 for the two sessions held at Haripura, Gujarat and Tripura. In his presidential address, he talked not only of freedom but also of reconstruction, the need for planning by setting up a planning commission, and of the gradual socialization of the entire agriculture and industrial system. He urged strongly that it was the right time to give an ultimatum to the British government for complete Swaraj. Now the Britishers became anxious. They knew that the Swaraj Party, they couldn't bear what they were doing. It was costing them a lot of problems. So what they did, because of that, they started arresting the people who were in the Swaraj Party. And because of that, Chandra Bose was also taken to prison many times, and because of that, it also affected his health. Now, Subhas Chandra Bose, he was a very good thinker. He was a great thinker. He was a man of vision and action. He knew what to do. He made such an impact around the people that he was elected twice as the president of the Indian National Congress in the year 1938 and 1939 for the two sessions that were held at Haripura, Gujarat and Tripura. And during his presidential address, during the speech that he was about to give, he didn't speak only about freedom, but he also spoke about reconstruction, the need for planning by setting up a planning commission, and of the gradual socialization of the entire agriculture and industrial system. He wanted to improve the entire country, and he also urged, that is, advised, that it was the right time to give an ultimatum. What is ultimatum? A final warning. To whom? to the British government for complete Swaraj, freedom, for complete freedom. Britain was engaged in the World War, and so Gandhiji and Nehru were of the opinion that the Congress should not take advantage of Britain's difficulties. But Bose had strong views and advocated total freedom. He travelled throughout the country to organize public opinion against the war effort. So he was arrested on July 2nd, 1940 at Madras. On November 26, 1940, Bose went on hunger strike to protest against the ill treatment of prisoners. As his condition suddenly worsened, he was released but was kept under police surveillance. Bose escaped from the British and reached Kabul, and from there he went to Berlin via Moscow. The whole country was thrilled when his voice was heard over the Berlin radio. When Japan entered the World War, Subhas left for Japan. He went to Singapore and took over the leadership of the Indian independence movement. Now, Britain was very much involved in the World War, and because of that, Gandhiji and Nehru, they both had the opinion that the Congress should not take advantage. We cannot go to war with Britain in this time because they are already in difficulty. But Bose had some different views, and he had very strong views, and he wanted total freedom. So he started traveling around the country to organize public opinion against the war effort. He wanted people to support him. And because of that, he was arrested on July 2nd, 1940 at Madras. He again, on November 26th, 1940, he went on a hunger strike. Why? Because there was ill treatment of the prisoners. So he started protesting against it. And because of this hunger strike, his condition, his health worsened. And because of that, the police had to release him, but he was still under surveillance. That is, a close watch kept on someone. Now, Bose was able to escape from the British and he went to Kabul. Where is Kabul? Afghanistan, capital of Afghanistan. And from there he went to Berlin, that is Germany, and from there he traveled to Moscow, that is the capital of Russia. And the whole country was so happy when they heard his voice over the Berlin radio. And when Japan entered the World War, Subhas Chandra Bose, he left for Japan. From there he went to Singapore and took over the leadership of Indian independence movement. Subhas went to Southeast Asia and organized the Indian National Army, INA, to fight against the British. The Indian soldiers and civilians at once declared their allegiance to him and began to call him Netaji. He gave them the inspiring call of Jai Hind and Dilli Chalo. While launching the war, Netaji went on air on July 6, 1944 and sought Gandhiji's blessings in the following words: Father of our nation, in this holy war of India's liberation, we ask for your blessings and good wishes. Now, Subhas Chandra Bose, he went to Southeast Asia and organized the Indian National Army, that is INA, because he wanted to fight against the British. The Indian soldiers and civilians, they at once declared that they will support him. Allegiance, loyalty, faith. They had that faith in him and immediately they said, okay, we are ready to fight. And they began calling him Netaji. And he also gave them the inspiring call of Jai Hind and Dilli Chalo. These slogans were given by Subhas Chandra Bose. So when launching the war, Netaji went on air again. So Netaji went over the radio on July 6, 1944 and he asked Gandhiji's blessings in the following words. He said, Father of our nation. He described Gandhiji as father of our nation. In this holy war of India's liberation, India's freedom, we ask for your blessings and good wishes. The INA fought so well that it soon liberated about 3,200 square kilometers of Indian territory from the well-entrenched British Army. But it was soon beset by various difficulties such as lack of communication and food, rigors of the monsoon, and breakdown in supplies. On the other hand, the Japanese forces were withdrawn as the war went badly for them. But the INA refused to retreat, with the result that thousands of soldiers were captured by the British forces. They were disarmed and court martialed. Jawaharlal Nehru himself organized and conducted their defense. Ultimately, the government released them. The INA, Indian National Army, fought so well that it soon liberated about 3,200 square kilometers of Indian territory from the British Army. They were able to get freedom to that area. But again, due to some various difficulties, it soon beset. What is beset? Attacked. Beset was attacked because of lack of communication and food and continuous monsoon, rain, and breakdown in supplies. There were lots of issues, and because of that, they could not do anything on that. And on the other hand, the Japanese forces who had taken part in the World War, they withdrew. They went back. They moved back. Why? Because it was going very bad for them. But the NIA refused to retreat. They refused to come back. They wanted to fight. They wanted to win. And because of this, thousands of soldiers were captured by the British forces. They were disarmed and court-martialed. What is court-martialed? They were accused of offences against the military law. Action was taken. Jawaharlal Nehru himself organized and he conducted their defense, and finally the government had to release them. Netaji boarded a Japanese aircraft for Tokyo on August 18, 1945. The plane landed in Formosa at noon, and according to the Japanese sources, it caught fire while taking off. Netaji was badly burnt but managed to come out of the plane. He was rushed to a hospital where he died the same night. It is amazing how much Subhas Chandra Bose was able to achieve and accomplish in his life of 48 years. He was a brilliant student and could have easily attained a high position of power as an ICS officer, but he preferred a life of trials and tribulations as a fighter for his country's freedom. His proud and independent spirit mocked at ill health and ill fortune. He was a doer as well as a thinker and a fighter who never submitted to defeat. In life, he was a natural leader of men who inspired immense devotion and loyalty. In death, he became a legend. People refuse to believe that Netaji is dead. Perhaps they are right, for martyrs never die. Now Netaji, Subhas Chandra Bose, he boarded a Japanese aircraft for Tokyo, Japan on August 18, 1945. The plane landed in a place called Formosa at noon, and according to the Japanese sources, it caught fire while taking off. And Netaji was badly burned. He managed to come out of the plane. He was alive when he came out, but he was completely burnt. And he was rushed to a hospital where he died the same night. That was the ending of such a wonderful person. It is amazing to know what all he has achieved and accomplished in his life of 48 years. He was a brilliant student and he could have got a wonderful high position, or he could have been in power as an ICS officer, but he preferred a life of trouble, trials, as a fighter for his country's freedom. He fought for his country. He didn't think about his own self. His soul was independent. He was a thinker. He was a fighter. He was a doer. He never submitted to defeat. It didn't matter what problem he had to face, but he was a natural leader, not just for few of them, but for almost everyone who had given too much of loyalty towards him, shown loyalty, faith towards him. And in death, he became a legend that people still talk about him, still praise him, still respect him. And people refuse to believe that Netaji is dead, because it's true that martyrs never die. Who are martyrs? Someone who dies for a cause. And the cause that he died was for our country's freedom. And not just him, All the freedom fighters are martyrs for us, and we will always respect them and have the love towards them forever. I do hope you have understood this wonderful lesson. In case you have any doubts, you can comment below and do subscribe for my channel for more videos. Thank you and stay safe.